Welcome if you're here, and welcome if you're there, and smoke 'em if you got 'em. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Hey, Did You See This One? I purposely botched the intro because I wanted to try something new. But I am not your host tonight. Tonight's host is Caylen. It is Caylen's birthday month. Everybody give a hand to Caylen. Happy birthday, Caylen. It's your birthday month, and why don't you tell them what you're doing this month for your birthday?
Well, I usually like to get a new birthday outfit for myself. I wanted to go to Palladium.
Let's stop you right there for one moment. I mean,
I believe you're asking in regards to our show.
Yes,
Hey,
and then you can tell us about your new birthday suit.
Thank you for having me and allow me to botch the intro. This month we are doing Caylen's Crazies, where every week we're doing a new movie with some sort of crazy character element to it. Which brings us to our first movie. California with a K.
California. I love the OC. I watched the whole series of the OC today. Was that not what I was supposed to do?
That's exactly what you're supposed to do. Although I don't think you have enough. I don't think 24 hours is enough to watch the whole series.
I made it work.
Would you watch it on 2x speed?
I watched it on 4x speed, and I had a whole season worth of VLCs open, so I was watching.
Isn't the more accurate joke is that you watched the whole first season of Californication starring David Duchovny?
Ooh, that would have been. Yeah, that would have been.
Nope.
Missed opportunity.
It wasn't, because I knew what I was doing.
I see.
Nope.
I will always call this movie California with a K, though. Always.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
California with a seemingly pointless K. Is there a reason they did it? Was there another movie named California and they had to do a K, or is it because he's a killer? I don't understand.
So I'm curious about that. My mind went to that point exactly. You know, he's a killer. Was the only thing I could think of.
I have a theory.
Then why not Killerfornia?
Save your theory for your theory segment.
Okay.
I don't have one yet.
No, me.
Before we get to all of that, welcome everyone to this week's episode, where we are going to be talking about California. Let me start off by saying we discuss movies and their production and performance, and in no way condone violence in any way, shape, or form. That being said, thank you for joining us. This week's movie is California. Got a few up and coming actors in it. Came out in 1993.
You should tag on to that. There's a couple of I didn't realize. So just before we get into this, I just want to expand on what Caylen's saying. Brad Pitt is in this movie, and very recently Brad Pitt had some shit.
I think it was 5 years ago when the incident happened, but it had resurgence sort of.
It just came out recently when Angelina Jolie. I don't want to get into it. And it's kind of unfortunate this movie highlights domestic violence, and so that's what happened. I'm not going to get into the specifics. You can use you're on the internet, look it up. But Caylen, thank you for saying that, because I wanted to watch this movie for some time. It absolutely fits the theme of Hey, Did You See This One? That notion, and it does fit with Caylen's theme this month. So apologies for doing a Brad Pitt movie, but I feel like it's big. We can sort of use this as a podium to sort of denounce.
Yeah, obviously nobody in this room is going to be like, wow, what a great man.
No,
he was for making this movie.
This movie specifically.
We're judging the movie based on the merits of the performance and the story and everything within it, and nothing else. And as serious as the issue is, we're probably not going to bring it up again in the episode. And if it's a triggery thing for everybody, we apologize. But we're doing it based on it being a movie, and that's it.
Thank you. Okay, back to you, Caylen.
Oh, thank you. Let us start with our introductions to this movie. Steven, on my screen, you're the first one next to me. Why don't you let us know your introduction to this movie?
My introduction to this movie was about a week ago when you're like, let's do this movie for next week. And I was like, I've never heard of this movie. So I looked it up and I said, maybe we shouldn't do this. And then I read the synopsis and I was like, okay, I kind of like the concept. So I'll watch it. Even if we don't decide to do this movie, I would like to watch it just because the summary of the movie sounded intriguing to me. And then I watched it today. And that is my first time watching, my first true introduction. And that's kind of the long and short. Mostly short, very short, even.
We appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us to you, Jason. Tell us about your first experience to this movie.
I remember this movie from when I was a kid. I think my mom saw it, and much like Steve's parents would be like, don't watch horror movies because they're too spoopy doopy. She said, I remember her being like, that was the most messed up thing I've ever seen. And
that's what your mom said?
Yeah, my mom sort of, or maybe my aunt or even my dad. But
Can I just cut you off for 1 second? My mom didn't just say that about horror movies. She said that about every movie that she didn't think I should watch.
Oh, okay.
She said they were scary. So James Bond movies were scary movies, and I wasn't allowed to watch them.
Well,
kind of like when parents tell their kids everything's chicken. It's like, but the opposite.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the opposite, but yeah. Yes.
But essentially, what I learned through watching The Crow recently and now this movie is when my parents were just slightly younger than I am now, watching these movies in the early 90s, and then the next day being like, that was fucked, and hearing them talk about it all day and being like, you know, movies had a greater, like, people had a different experience with movies back then because there were way less. And I think when you saw something that like moved you or something that terrorized you to your core, it stuck with you longer. And this was one of those things I remember hearing people talk about being like, that movie is crazy. That movie is messed up. And I'll say I watched it today for the first time, and we will get into how we feel about it after but that's my introduction, as I remember my mom talking about it being horrible.
Yeah. I just want to like add one thing onto what you're saying. I think your mom, being a woman, probably the things that she saw in this movie were probably far more disturbing to her than it would.
That's true, but explain my dad. Like, there's nothing bad in The Crow. There's nothing really that. It's like a pretty violent movie, but like it's not that bad. And I remember him being like messed up for a week by it.
Right. Yeah.
Is my dad a crow secretly? Is my dad?
Maybe your dad is a crow.
He's got crow powers. He's got secret crow powers, and
have you ever gone to your dad's house and he's wearing black lipstick and black eyeshadow, and
he's wearing a
his hair is all like greased down.
Yeah,
he's hanging upside down in a windowsill.
Do crows do that?
No, but the crow does for some reason. I think he's mostly a vampire.
It's a dumb allegory for vampirism.
Word. I haven't seen that one, so maybe we should add it to our list.
You've never seen The Crow?
No.
I guess I didn't see The Crow until a few years ago.
Jason.
Because it was the same
it's
thing.
Not that great. It's not like you gotta watch The Crow. Like, there are people who will say that, but
it was a superhero comic book movie at a time when there were literally zero besides Superman and Batman.
When there were literally zero except for like 10 other ones.
No, Batman and Superman.
Captain America, the Fantastic Four.
You can't really. Don't do that.
They existed.
Fantastic Four barely exists as a
Darkman.
released movie. Okay. Darkman is in the same vein, though, I think, as The Crow. Anyway.
The Mask.
Okay, I get it.
That wasn't out yet. The Mask wasn't out yet. But yeah, we're being pedantic. We're being facetious. Let's move on to Caylen's first time. Get your pedantic ass out of here.
Keep your pedantic ass here. I love it.
Well, it's your turn.
Stop dancing all over my grave. Okay, that's it.
No, let's do one more.
Talk at me, Padaddy.
No. Right in the Padussi.
Oh God.
Okay, no. When they're not funny anymore, that's when we stop.
You're supposed to stop one before it's not funny anymore, I think. But anyway, sorry, Caylen.
No, you stuff your stories in a sack. My introduction to this movie was one of my classic trips to HMV. And I won't lie, I saw the cover. I saw Brad Pitt was on it. At the time, I was like, okay, Brad Pitt, I like his stuff. Let's check it out. And not knowing anything about it, which I got to say is my favorite. I think I have to say that it is my favorite way to watch a movie is not know anything about it. Jason, I believe you mentioned on previous episodes where you don't like seeing trailers for certain movies.
Previous episodes, like that's my identity. I haven't seen the trailer for the new Ant-Man, and I refuse to watch it. And I'm sticking to it. Yeah, it came out last week. I'm not watching it, and I refuse. I'm going into that one blind.
Okay, we talk about this way too often. We know you hate trailers. God damn. We had a trailer show for a little while. We had to stop doing it because it ruined Secret Window or whatever.
That's not why we stopped doing that show, but
I know. Once again, I put my pedantic pants on.
Padam pants?
What color? Is there a pattern?
They're always blue, baby. Because they make me
Well,
sad.
actually, they're blue with like lines, and the lines are perpendicular.
With a hint of navy.
I was being perpendantic.
All right. Sorry, Caylen, continue.
Allow me to be perpendicular and continue with my intro.
Close.
Was that one? Did that work? No, didn't work.
Remember when we tried to make the intros really snappy and quick for one episode?
There's this one time.
On track.
This was a random HMV buy a couple years ago, let's say around 10 or so. And so last year, my month was stunted comedies, which are my primary genre. You know, laughs and stunts, love it. My next favorite thing is the human psyche, especially weird. What's the word I'm looking for? Psychological thrillers, let's say, I guess. And what makes people tick? Why do people act the way that they do? But so a couple years ago, random buy at HMV. It was weird and different. It was very different from the type of movies that I would see these people in, and which was another thing that I just kind of enjoyed about it as well, where it was kind of like left field in that sense. And this year, I had this idea for this month shortly after last year's month, getting ready for this year, and so not really knowing the specifics of things prior, and had already kind of picked it out. And appreciate you guys for allowing me to continue with that.
I enjoy your month because it was unhinged last year, and I feel like you're leaning into the unhinged this year with your literal.
This year you went literal unhinged. Let's see how crazy we can get.
Which I do appreciate.
Well, this movie follows the lives of a photographer and writer who are having a hard time.
An erotic photographer.
I mean, I'm not sure if I would label it like that, but
you wouldn't label her art. You wouldn't label her photography as erotic. It's like people eating each other out and boning.
I mean, is there another word for that type of photography?
Porno.
I didn't say pornographic photographer. I said erotic because that's what it is.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I guess we don't really see any of her other works, but yes, her photography is heavy.
It's all flowers that look very much like vaginas. Also erotic.
The one with the priest, I thought was actually like, I liked the framing and the lines and like what was in the shot. It was very like symmetrical, as well as what's it called, like juxtaposition. Is it juxtaposing when it's two opposite things. So you have porn and then you have the priest. Yeah.
Yep.
But we follow this photographer, erotic photographer and writer. She's having a hard time getting business. He's in a bit of a rut trying to figure out what to write. And they want to move to California. But hey, times are hard. They don't have extra money to make it. Let's place an ad on a school billboard or tack board. And
it's just one of those cork boards in the hallway. Also, they can't afford to go to California, so they decide to go to California with a K. That's what. That's the whole story.
And that's exactly. Exactly. It's discount California.
So while we're there, what I will say is my theory about it being California with a K is it's just a colloquial term for going to California for people in this area of the world of the United States. I think it's no more than that, and that because he writes it on that corkboard with a K, so I was just like, oh, they must just just be a visual signal to be like, oh, those fucking Californians, because all through the movie, Early talks about his negativity and his misconceptions about what it's like in California, and to a lesser degree, you sort of get that from everybody else. They have all these weird misconceptions about California, and I think this movie is a weird the state of California sentiment. Anyway, that was just me sitting.
I mean, a sentiment that continues on to this day.
True.
Most people assume that if you're from California, you're even more insular than the United States. It's like the United States exists as an insular body that doesn't really understand the outside of its own borders. And then California is the same way. It doesn't understand its own country outside of its own borders.
You could say that about Quebec in Canada, and you could say that about Toronto in
Quebec
Canada.
With a K.
Quebec with a K. Quebec.
That could work.
Toronto with a K.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's probably accurate. I don't really know much about that kind of sort of. I don't even know what you would consider that. I guess you could call it colloquial, but I don't really know.
That's what I gathered.
Yeah.
Also, I do like the theory that it's the K is for killer, but then just call the movie Kalifornia, because that also works.
But then you would think it's going to be like a Jason Statham slasher movie.
Yeah.
California. Welcome to California.
California.
Yeah.
Population.
To that point, though, movie title, we get a audio mention at 11:31, but they don't say with a K. They just say California. But then we get a visual at 18:12.
Yeah, I don't think. They're never gonna say California with a K.
We're going to California with a K, guys. I wrote down 11:55-ish. They say it, but I kind of stopped paying attention. I forgot. They said it, then I was just listening to David Duchovny talk, because I could listen to just him do his Mulder voice for hours.
But also, we should mention they're not just going to California because they want to go to California. They want to do a road trip to visit a bunch of different significant serial killer sites along the way, so that he can write his book and she can take photographs for the book. He wrote an article on serial killers, and he got this book deal, which immediately for me, I'm like, red flag for this publisher. You're telling me the publisher can't front you I don't know, $1,000 to pay for your gas and food while you're driving across the country to visit all these significant sites? If that's not the case, it's not a real publisher. It's some fucking dude who's just gonna sell it to a publisher. These people seem stupid.
Also, he doesn't.
And also, gas is $25 to fill a tank.
Yeah. Also, he doesn't vet anybody. He takes the literal first person who comes along, because he keeps calling him sir. He says that he's he seemed really nice. He kept calling me sir. I didn't look at his background. The background checks don't exist in this universe. I couldn't tell.
I'm pretty sure that's not where I got sir from.
What do you mean?
What?
I remember working at Boston Pizza. I would call people sir, and then it just kind of seemed to be something that stuck with, people kind of knew me for that or whatever.
Oh, so what you're saying is that you're a murderer.
I'm a crazy person. I'll give you that.
I think no, but my point here is that, I guess since we don't really go plot point by plot point, we'll just kind of get into it. Fucking David Duchovny's character is the dumbest idiot.
Yeah.
Bry.
That's what I wrote in my
Brian?
notes, is that he is a fucking stupid, empathy-driven weirdo.
He's naive. He has no world experience, even though he's this fucking
He's a
epic
writer,
journalist.
Yeah.
Writer characters in movies usually have some sort of like edge to them. He has no edge. He's probably hired because like he's from Red Shoe Diaries. Like this is like X-Files is on TV. I don't know if it's a popular phenomenon in '93 yet.
I think it started like a year before this, so he probably already had this in the bag as a movie, like as that show is being filmed.
Red Shoe Diaries is his biggest thing at this point, I'm pretty sure. And everything he does oozes with sex except for the X-Files. Everything else, he plays a fucking sex-crazed sex man. And in this, he doesn't overtly, but when they do have a sex scene later, it's like, what? That's too much. You're doing too much.
Yeah, that sex scene was a little bit dumb to me, but at the same time, it did serve a purpose of some degree. It wasn't just there to be there. But at first, I was like, why is this here? It better pan over and have Brad Pitt fucking creepily listening.
I wanted,
and it did. And I was like, there we go. Okay.
I wanted to talk about these elements throughout the movie. There are a lot of hard words in this movie. There's a lot of hard visuals. There's a lot of hard like realizations. There's the R word is used and thrown around. And there is a superfluous seeming sex scene, but I think all of it, compared to like a shitty 80s action movie that has all those things in it, and it's all superfluous. I feel like the object of this movie was to make it realistic in world realistic. It's gritty. It starts out gritty. It's gross. It's grimy. And I think that that's part of what I liked about this movie. I thought that for 1993, there's this string of movies from this era that are trying to get this grime on camera. Tarantino's famous for it around this time, like True Romance, Pulp Fiction, even The Crow.
He didn't direct True Romance.
He didn't. Well, he produced it.
He wrote it.
John McQuinn?
He wrote it. He's the writer.
Anyway, my point stands. It's a kind of a vibe.
I know, but what I'm saying is like you don't see boobs in Quentin Tarantino movies, and like they're not there for no reason if you ever do see them. Yeah. He rarely does sex scenes. He does unless feet. It's. Well, yeah, that's his thing. but like the closest thing to a sex scene in a Quentin Tarantino movie is when the guy is getting butt fucked by the Mr. Zed or whatever his name is.
Can we still say Gimp? I guess my point is that I felt like it wasn't necessary, but it worked in world. And then I think this movie compared to something like Natural Born Killers the next year, Natural Born Killers is this movie, but like remade in a good way, because Juliette Lewis plays a similar character, but her character in Natural Born Killers has a brain and can think and is just as fucking sadistic as Woody Harrelson's character. In this, they made Juliette Lewis a donkey brain. They made her have a donkey's brain. And it sucks because Juliette Lewis is such a good actor that she made me believe that she has a donkey brain. And it really sucks because she has such a wide range, but in this era they were just making her play these like.
For that character, though, to be with someone like that, she would have, like, part of me kind of feels she would have to be like that, right? But she also nailed that role. Like, she, like you just said, like, it felt real.
I think for me, the issue is that both of the characters felt unreal to me. Like, they both did not seem like real people. I didn't like her at all. Like, the entire movie, through the whole thing, every time she's having some sort of extended dialogue with anybody, I'm just like, okay, I get it. She's fucking stupid. Move on, move on, move on. I'm so uncomfortable right now. It's honestly gets boring. It's like talking to like a little kid when you don't want to talk to a little kid. And they're like, and then I got this dinosaur card, and then this dinosaur card came after that. And I'm like, I get it. You're fucking stupid. I don't want to listen to this anymore.
That's absolutely valid. Just for
it doesn't push anything forward. It doesn't evolve anything for me for the character. It's just constantly bashing you over the head with how she has some sort of mental deficit, and it's the only reason she's with this guy is because she's literally too stupid to understand that she's being abused. And the amount of times that you have to witness it and hear her talking to somebody else about it and like her justifying it to herself, it doesn't evolve her character in any way. Her revelation within the movie is that she's confronted by murder over and over again near the end, and that's what causes her to finally use her head and be like, I gotta go now. But like it doesn't feel like growth to me. It just feels like she's not a character. The movie could have existed entirely without her as a character, and they could have found a way to make this movie work without that character.
I agree with you with Brad Pitt and Juliette Lewis feeling like their characters being cartoons. Yeah,
but they're cartoonish.
Very early in the movie, what I started doing is I was trying to watch. I always look for really good method actors to like break character even a little bit. So I was paying more attention to. I was really invested in Brad Pitt's like portrayal, because he always does these little things, like the eye thing in 12 Monkeys. He does that. Like that, he clear his throat snorting this.
That thing, yeah.
He does that a bunch of times, and I was like, "Oh, he's that guy right now," and I was captivated, even though it is a pretty unrealistic portrayal and almost an offensive portrayal of somebody from the South. Maybe not so much in 2022 because he's back then wearing a Confederate flag.
The amount of TikToks I've seen where I'm like, oh. They do exist. They do exist.
The Confederate flag used to not be an issue. People didn't really bat an eye on it back in the up until very recently.
They did.
Not out loud. Not out loud. It's always been like gross. What are you
doing?
Think
there's lots and lots of people who had a problem with it, and it's only until recently that it's been like vocalized as a problem that we're like, let's all talk about how this is a problem. And then there's the people who were like, I've been wearing it on my back since I was 7 years old and no one had a problem with it. My
grandpappy and their grandpappy. But I think that this version of redneck isn't that much of a caricature now. Maybe for a time people weren't like that, but
sorry, what I mean to say is that for this movie, they're not in the South. They're in like where are they supposed to be? Like Virginia or something, or Pennsylvania, or like they're not. It's not like they're in Texas.
Yeah, where I can't remember. Where do you guys recall where they start this movie? Because I didn't make a note of it. I just know that they go to Texas and then like Nevada, and then Texas and then somewhere in Nevada.
All I know is that they're not in a place that would be considered a part of the Confederacy. But saying.
Those rednecks.
Maybe he moved there though because he has all those issues, from the law and shit.
Well, he couldn't leave the state he committed the crime in. So
anyway, I still found it to be like very caricature-y. Like it's,
I get that.
There are points in this movie where you almost want to put on the subtitles to understand what the fuck he's saying. You're just like, what? What did he just say?
Oh, I didn't have that problem. I'm from Nova Scotia.
Yeah. I said almost. I didn't have an issue hearing what he was saying or understanding it, but like it's to that level of him doing like his Irish in Snatch almost, where he's like purposefully going out of his way to try and make it almost impossible for you to understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
He also has a scene in this where he's acting and eating, I'm pretty sure, which is a classic.
Yep.
Classic
and
Brad
it's
Pitt.
Gross. There's actually multiple scenes where he's eating, and I made in my notes a little note saying, you didn't have to make the eating that gross sounding, because it's like you can tell that they like added like chewy noises in the background. I'm like, oh god, when he's eating that sandwich.
Speaking of sound design, the fucking ADR in this movie is atrocious. Is some of the
a lot
worst,
of the sound in this movie is bad. Yeah.
Some of the worst. Okay, so there's a scene where him and Juliette Lewis are like having relations in the back of a car, and Carrie, who's a photographer, likes to capture eroticism, and she's trying to get this shot of them banging out. And they kind of he gets on top and you can see his face and he's kind of like snarling. And these snarls were so comedic to me that I burst out laughing. I was laughing out loud. it didn't.
I think that's another issue I had with this movie in general, is that they break these moments of comedic sort of editing and close-ups and sounds that, for what's happening in the movie, it's not that it's undercutting it, it's that it's just wrong for what's happening. You're like, this shouldn't be here. This is like this noise that's coming out of this man is funny and it's not scary. Like, there's this part at the end of the movie where there's an implied rape, basically, and you're like, is he going to do this? And then he does like this, like heel, and you expect like a ding 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 ding, like a banjo to start playing in the background, and then it cuts to her, and she, like, clearly something bad happened to her. So you're like, okay, I think that's what happened. And you're just like, what is the formula here that you're trying to? You like want him to be threatening, but then you have him do this like stupid laugh.
Maybe
And
that's
I don't know. It's
maybe
like all
that's
these
part of
mixed up bits of things that I'm like, this isn't right. What
Back when
were you
this-
doing in the editing room?
Back when this came out, though, it's like, I wonder if people. I know I always bring this up because, you know, there weren't podcasts in 1993, but I wonder if people went to see this in theaters, and they came out of the theater going, that movie was fucked up and it was weird, and it kind of disturbed me. What was up with the fucking Foley work in the ADR? Why was everything so?
It was probably just a budget thing. They probably didn't have enough money to, because if you listen to the music, it sucks. The score in this movie is terrible. It's like synthesized guitar music, and it's bad. You can do that in a TV series or a movie of this era. If you watch like Twin Peaks, it's the same thing. Everything's a synthesizer, and it's meant to sound like real instruments, but it's part of the charm of that movie because everything feels fake in that movie, or in that show specifically, right? Everything feels synthetic and manufactured, and that's the point of the show. But then you put it into something like this, and it's completely out of place.
There are a lot of licensed songs in it, though. I noticed. I feel like this was one of those movies that they probably made a lot of the budget back by selling a soundtrack album that was like advertised separately, like they did with The Crow. They did that with Natural Born Killers. You could get the Natural Born Killers soundtrack with all your favorite hits from L7 and Soundgarden. But this movie,
Black old sun, what you got?
the one song that I did actually recognize was "Strong Enough" by Sheryl Crow. When the two ladies are painting each other's fingernails and cutting each other's hair, you can hear "Strong Enough" by Sheryl Crow in the background, and that song's actually good. So go check that out. I do agree with you, though. The score was just like, whoa.
Yeah, and every once in a while you hear like a ding, 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 dong, ding. Some, like, every time it's the two of them together, there's some like synthesized banjo music happening in the background. I'm like, okay, yeah, we get it. They're hill folk or whatever. We don't need to keep hearing it.
It's unfortunate though, because spoiler alert, you're gonna be like mad at the rating I give this movie, because
Probably.
it's
fine. You're allowed to like whatever you want. I'm just saying that
I am going to be critical. I am going to be critical of this film. However, I did really enjoy it. I thought it was different than anything I've seen in a while. And I know this genre of movie existed before this, and it has been improved upon after this. But I built this up in my head in a way over the years. I'm pretty sure this was also on Showcase. It was one of those movies. So I'd see an ad for it and be like,
oh no, that movie probably has something really fucked up,
really messed up. And the worst thing in it, honestly, is rape, and that is fucked, and that's bad.
But it's also implied. It's not even visually there.
There's
just
no
mentally bad. Yeah.
There's barely nudity. There's only a little tiny bit of gore. It's pretty.
You don't even really see the kills. Like,
no.
Yeah, like there's like the moment where he murders the guy in the bathroom is probably the most brutalistic.
It's probably the most violent moment, and him getting smashed in the face with like a potter. And
but like the weirdest part about that scene is that guy comes in and he has like a fucking
catheter,
catheter bag to empty and not just pee normally. And you're like,
I'm assuming that's just because he has a long drive. Was my assumption on that one?
Or he just has a catheter, like he can't pee out of him. He puts his foot into the urinal and he unscrews a bag from his ankle and he pees.
I was wondering why his foot was up. I didn't put together.
He had a catheter bag inside of.
Because in my head, I'm just working through what had just happened. Like a rich guy almost hit this redneck. This redneck feels disenfranchised by everything anyway. Obviously, the dude's driving like a Rolls Royce or a BMW. He's gonna exact revenge on this man, and that's just happening. And then I go, why is his foot up like that? And then, and then Brad Pitt goes up beside him, and I'm like, here we go. And
while you were processing this, did you look into the sky and do this? Like, you missed a very long shot of him opening a fucking bag up and peeing at his ankle.
My eyes kind of glaze over sometimes, if I'm being honest, when I'm thinking hard. I'm kind of
to your point, though. So the answer you doesn't really do random kills. Like, they're all for a reason.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing that's really annoying to me is that you learn nothing about his character. You don't understand why he kills, and then they try to do this thing where it's like he only kills people that wronged him in some way, or out of a mode of self-defense. I don't even know if I would call it rules. That's the thing that's annoying to me is that if there are rules, we don't know what the fuck they are.
Well, he says it at the end. That, do I feel powerful? Do I feel superior? It's like, no, I feel good. It's fun.
Yeah, that's why what's annoying to me. That's annoying.
But also so it's kind of. He went to jail for killing somebody, right? Was the beginning of the movie why he went to jail? The thing. So the very beginning.
I don't think he got caught for that. I don't think
that was just something that fucking happened. Okay, so
I just assumed that was like after he got out of jail and he just goes out killing every once in a while, like kill people for fun or whatever.
So there's this shot at the very beginning of the movie that it made me go, "Oh, this thing's gonna be fucked up and gritty," but it wasn't that fucked up, and it was mostly just gross to look at. A lot of the time.
What shot? Shot of him in the rain?
Shot of him in the rain. The guy picks up a prostitute. She's like, "You got a light?" And he's like, "This is my wife's car." And then he just drops a boulder off a fucking like overpass, and the car flips. Or the car fucking doesn't flip. It flips, right?
Yeah, it flips.
Yeah.
There's a lot of car flipping in this movie that makes no sense. Anyway.
Because the movie needed to do stuff to be interesting visually, because there was nothing else happening in it to be interesting. My
assumption was that he went to jail for that through like a manslaughtery kind of a thing, where like, he wasn't like premeditated murder.
No, they have like a Joker thing where the whole movie he's like told everybody different stories as to why he went to prison, so nobody knows why he went to prison. And it's
yeah, good point.
But then my after that, my assumption was that he killed the landlord because the landlord was messing with his girlfriend. Then after he kills somebody the first time, he's like, "I killed one person. Let's get crazy." I didn't really put it together that he was basically killing indiscriminately and only got caught once and got off on it, like got off out of jail, and now just murders freely. I didn't get.
They also do.
That's why I was going
to talk about
just one other thing. I didn't see him as a serial killer really, so that was confusing to me. Why he was paired up with a serial killer investigator, which I thought would be more. And when the first time I saw David Duchovny, I was like, "Oh, this special agent specializes in serial killers." And then he's like, "Nope, I'm an author who's just writing a book."
Who's just writing about something that I find vaguely interesting.
It interests me, and it's a cash cow.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you write about like real crime, true crime, you will make bank. That's a reality.
Yeah.
But again, all the characters in this movie are fucking unlikable, like including David Duchovny. His whole thing is that he's like feigning empathy for these people in order to write these texts as though he's not trying to make money, like he's trying to understand them, but he's in no way doing actual research and like meeting actual serial killers. He's like, "I'm going to drive around and take photographs of places where people got murdered." That is exploitative. He's just trying to make money. Like he's not actually trying to get down and understand these people. He's like, "Well, if we go around and take pictures of swing sets and shit, it'll be good for the book." And you're like, "Yeah, okay, you asshole." Fuck, I had a thing that I wanted to say when you were talking, Jason, and I couldn't interrupt you.
Sorry.
what
Thank
was
you for
it?
not interrupting me.
I know I tried to, but then you told me to shut up, and I was like,
I didn't
"Fuck,
tell you to
I'm gonna
shut
forget this. I'm gonna forget this."
I wanted to not forget my thing while I was on a roll.
I know.
He was talking about how he didn't seem like a serial killer.
He's just a killer. Like, that's the thing, is he's not a serial killer. He's just a killer. Like, a serial killer implies that you have a pattern or a type of thing that you do specifically. He's just like a weird, dumb animal that goes around and kills when he gets a little bit upset. And that's the thing that makes me feel like this is completely unrealistic. He's gotten away from so many murders that it's like, no, this isn't how that would work. Like, in real life, if you went around killing like this, you would be caught immediately. Instantly, you would be caught. But the thing I actually wanted to say, I just remembered it. The parole officer, it does this thing that so many movies do, which is like despicable and dumb. And it's like, we want to make this character unlikable. Okay, so what do? We make him really, really fucking gross. And it's like the thing that they do in Drag Me to Hell with like the old gypsy woman who, like, she takes her teeth out to eat candy and it's really nasty and gross. And this guy comes in and he's being a complete asshole. And we would have disliked him anyway. But instead, we're going to make him have this like disgusting, horrible cough where he's like hacking up his lung. He's clearly dying of something. And he has only one hand. He's got a fucking hook hand. And he's being physically abusive. It's like, all right, okay, we get it. This guy's an asshole. And that's how this whole movie feels to me. It's
that
like
was the next
constantly
thing.
beating you over the head with stuff that you're
I was
like,
gonna
okay,
say,
I get it. And
it's a movie, not a film, definitely.
But I also feel the same.
It's framed like a film because there's fucking no car chase or explosion, but there's flipping cars.
To your stupid ass standards of what is a film and a movie,
hey,
yeah.
I don't think it's stupid ass. It's a good framework in my.
It's
opinion.
not. Movies can be terrible without car chases. Actually, there is a car chase in this movie, so you're wrong. Remember when he's like drives through the fence with a nuclear bomb strapped to the chest or whatever of the hood of the car, and then David Duchovny chases through there later? It's just a very, very slow chase. It's still a chase.
I guess they go to a nuclear test site, which is kind of the explosion for the movie.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, that's very true. I wanted to talk about that part of how they just added this really gross character.
Can I talk about that character for 1 second?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
That was the next thing I wanted to talk about. And this fucking parole officer guy, they did that thing also where they set up a character like Tommy Lee Jones in The Fugitive, who's obviously going to be chasing him through the whole movie, and he chases them for like, well, he doesn't do anything.
Like half a county, yeah.
He barely, he goes and he's there in the investigation moment when they're looking at the burnt down trailer and they find, we'll talk about that in a minute, they find the guy, the fucking landlord not buried, even though he dug the whole asshole.
He's like partially buried.
Separately.
Yeah, that I didn't understand that. Why not fill it all in?
It's I think
it's a dumb movie.
Systematic.
It doesn't make any sense. This movie's dumb.
But it's entertaining as fuck. But in my opinion, but the problem with that character is I was like, oh, why do they make this character so unlikable and shitty to the point that I feel bad for early in this movie? Early is fucking Brad Pitt's name. I think it's Earl.
It's Early Grayce.
I know, but is his name Early?
Well,
or
his
Earl?
name's Early Grayce.
Yeah.
Holy fuck, that's so smart. It's a smart name.
No, but why do they set this character up? Like, what's the point? I think what the intention of the writers was, when we first see Early, we want him to seem misunderstood and be kind of a good guy, and we want the scale to slowly go down. But
they do that throughout the movie as well, right? They keep spoon-feeding you little bits.
But my point is if you don't have a scale, if you only have one side of a scale, it's just somebody sinking. But they set it up like this dude, they were going to do what's known as in wrestling as a double turn, where the bad guy becomes the good guy becomes the bad guy, and you slowly have Early reveal that he's this sadistic killer, and the guy who has the horrible throat infection or a chest infection with the hook hand sort of starts to like work with Brian and become a good guy, but they just get rid of him after Act 1, and Early just kind of goes this way and becomes the Joker. He becomes the
scale is rebalanced by his actions with David Duchovny, and the balance of that part is revelations that you're getting through the photographer. That's where the scale comes back in. That's the thing that still exists throughout the movie, but it's just like he keeps throwing the scale off so much that like you get to a point where he's so reprehensible that you're never going to be able to balance those scales again, and then they still keep piling on to that other side of the scale. That you're like, we get it. He's a terrible, shitty human being. Like, he's not redeemable. He's bad. And then they throw rape on top of that. And you're like, the whole table flips over.
Like, how about the moment where they go into the old lady's house and he's like, "What happened to your husband?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm a widow." And then the next scene is him looking around an office and a dude looking at a telescope. And it's just the old man. Like, she tried to lie with the guy in the house. Like this fucking sadistic maniac wasn't just going to go through the home. And
she probably was like, if I can keep him busy enough in here with me, maybe my husband will figure it out, and maybe my husband has a gun collection or something.
No, the husband was an oblivious dummy. He was written one-dimensional.
He was into stars. He really likes looking at stars.
Telescope. He's like, and he thinks when Early comes in the room and he's just like playing with shit, like when Kevin McAllister goes into the toy store in the second Home Alone, he's just fucking with shit. He's like, "Come on over here, honey. Come on over here and look."
Again, like that whole scene is inherently funny. It's a funny scene, and I was watching it and being like, "This is funny," but I'm so upset at the fact that
dude's gonna get fucking.
I know this guy's gonna get killed, and then the movie's like, I'm not gonna just shoot you with my movie gun. I'm gonna find another movie way to kill you, and it's like I'm gonna hit you with a golf club. And
why didn't they show that though? Why didn't they show not show him getting bludgeoned? Why didn't they have a fucking like there's lightning going off and he's like?
Because they probably had to. It was like that or the implied rape at the end. They had to decide, and they're like, it was more important to have the.
They got rid of. They were able to do one interesting kill, a shovel to the face, and implied rape, and that's all they could do, and the rest of it was kind of off camera. And I know last month I said I really like an off camera kill, but man, I hated the off camera kill in this with the fucking golf club because it's
because you already knew he was dead, right? Like the thing. So the off camera kill in Halloween 2, right, where you find the doctor with the syringe in his eye. That's a good off camera kill because you're not 100% certain that Halloween man found that doctor, but in this situation you know that he killed him. You already know because you see him at the telescope with the golf club. The man is not there. You know he killed him, and you're like, ugh, okay, so is he gonna have his head bashed in? Is he gonna have a golf club stuck down his throat? I was like, it better be something interesting.
Stuck down his throat would have been amazing.
Yeah, like with like a golf club sticking out, like a punter. That would have been cool.
Crazy. Thank you for the joiner. I don't want it to seem like we're on like a rerun or we're recording. R2 or Y2RJ. I think that's a reference to the professional wrestler Chris Jericho. Thank you for joining the chat. Back to our program.
Back to the scheduled show.
Back to the regularly scheduled program about Brad Pitt as the Joker.
I will say in that same scene, the one thing that I did agree with was Brad Pitt's critiques of the photographs of what's her name's photographs. I was like, true, they are stinky bullshit pictures. You're right, these suck.
And to what Caylen was saying,
you didn't find them provocative?
What's
it provoked me to want to tell her that they sucked. this is bullshit. It's not true erotica. You're not creative. Whoever took these photographs, all you did was snap shitty porn shots without showing anyone's faces. That's all you did. This is bad. This is like going on Reddit now and looking at like amateur photography or whatever.
You greased everybody up and did close-ups of like hips close together. Yeah. I
honestly thought that the idea of making her an erotic photographer made absolutely no sense to me, except to exhibit to us as the audience that she is inherently a sexually free person, which is only there to contrast her against the other idiot who's like basically like a slave.
But also at the time,
that's Adele.
At the time, to make her, you would have to do that to make a woman character like that in 1993, because you couldn't just have a strong woman. That would be no. She has to be a free thinker,
if she was a creative, I think if she was a true creative, like a photographer that took interesting, creative photos, it would have been better for her character than to just make her like I make provocative images because I'm a provocative woman. Like it's basically like it's making her character very, very rigid, just like the other female character, just like all the characters really. They're all sort of like these rigid, this is what they are, there's nothing else to them. There's literally nothing else there than what is being presented to you. And I don't know, I found it like a wasted opportunity, I guess, or like a lazy way of writing people.
I did kind of like her character in that it felt like she was like the straight man character for all the rest of the people she was with. Everything everybody said, she was like, "Are you serious right now?" So I did like that she was at least.
She made sense. Yeah.
She was the audience insert a little bit at least. But I thought that there's that moment near the beginning of the movie where she's got her fucking dumb pictures up on a projector, right? And she's like, why? She's flipping through them and they're amateur porn, right? And it's 1993, so
it's erotica.
It's 1993, so the fact that there's like people of color with a white woman in it is probably the context, right? That's provocative because it's 1993 and fucking we're gonna freak the minds of the masses. She's like, this isn't. Everybody tells me this isn't fit for public consumption, and I'm like, no shit, it isn't.
She was ahead of her time.
What is she at? What is she? Maybe a little bit.
Did you laugh or almost choke? What was that?
Something was in my
combo.
throat. Yeah,
combination.
Something was in my throat.
I think that's Caylen. That's like the idea, right? Is like that's what they're trying to say is that she's ahead of her time. But what we're trying to say is that like it's a lazy excuse of like character development. It's trying to like present you with this idea of like this free person who's just like, I'm creative and this is how creative I am and I don't care what society thinks. But it's like only provocative because it is going against the grain of like what would be considered public consumption at this time.
Don't settle for like, mass consumption, as Brad put it.
And ironically enough, she had the hairstyle of the time. She had the movie Hackers. I think every woman in the movie Hackers had this hairstyle. You know,
she's also Lieutenant Rowe from Star Trek.
Yeah, all the first strong female characters from the early '90s had this fucking mushroom cut with the fucking shit.
Called a bob.
It's a bob, but it's like a mushroom cut. So when I was a kid, boys got mushroom cuts all the time.
Yes, I had her exact haircut.
But
nice.
The difference between a bob, I think, and a mushroom cut is that tuft at the bottom. I think if it's a true bob, that's flush. Like it doesn't have that. I'm pointing at. You can't see what I'm doing. I'm like pointing at it. It's hard to explain what I mean, but do you see where like the top of her neck meets her hair, and how there's that like tuft bit, the like triangle of it. That's I couldn't stop looking at it and being like, that's a choice. And then she gives that same haircut so there's this really weird like moment where you get the vibe through this movie that that he compares Adele to Carrie. Sorry, Early does, because you know Carrie's buxom. She's a good-looking lady, and Adele's
she's got a nice round face. She's got a thick-ass muscular neck and shoulders. She's hot as hell. Hey, she looks like she could kick the shit out of me, and I'm
into that. So the vibe that I get, what I thought was going to happen is I thought this was going to go completely differently. I thought Early was going to exude sexuality because he's Brad Pitt. I thought Carrie was going to be like, ooh, I like Early, and they were going to have like a secret fling. That's not what happened. We get a scene where Early opens her motel door with his hand fully in his pocket, and then he's like, can I help you take your luggage? And she's like topless. Well, she has a bra, but she's topless. And it's like, oh, he's a weirdo pervert in addition to being a weird sex murderer, a weird serial killer.
But then we get a mirror scene, sort of, when she's kind of perversely watching them, Early and Adele, in the car, right?
But she's a neurotic photographer, so she was like, "This is prime real estate for getting."
But she still probably shouldn't have done it.
No.
Yeah.
Not.
But I think Caylen's right, though. I think that was meant to be like a direct comparison to him watching her watching him kind of thing. But she had already kind of voiced her disgust with him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the same time, like, there is a weird implication in the movie that she is like fascinated by him in a weird way, which is like,
at first
could have been more interesting. It could have been more interesting. Even in that moment, she's already been like, "Fuck you, fuck this. I want to get out of here." But
Uh-oh. I think Steve's computer exploded. Well, he'll be back.
Need more fans.
He'll be back in 5 minutes or so. There's this fuck, it really derails everything when somebody drops from the call. The thing that I was going to bring up in relation to that was that I forget what Steve was saying.
Early watches her.
Yeah.
She has a haircut. What were you about to say?
We need somebody to take minutes on this show. Okay. I'm going to change the subject completely. I thought that there was a very chaotic moment early in the movie when we met the landlord, and it's Early's driving around, like, missing the landlord with the car. There's the bad ADR happening. There's the dog started banging, and I just thought that chaos was hilarious. Oh, I was gonna tell the story of how why. So we mentioned the haircut, and we mentioned that Juliette Lewis's character Adele gets her haircut when they're having their like nice. Her and Carrie are having their nice night together that goes south.
Yeah.
But basically, there's this weird part where, it goes right back to the beginning of how we got to the point of them lusting after each other or not lusting after each other.
Mm-hmm.
He meets Carrie, and then Adele falls asleep, and he's got scissors in his hand, and the next day, fucking Adele has her hair all cut, like all weird.
He hears them banging, like he's already kind of got an attraction for her or whatever, right? He hears them banging, which I guess just intensifies his attraction, and that wants to exactly do the same with Adele. Yeah.
And he tries to do the best approximation of that hairstyle. So the next night, it's so bizarre that this even happens. Brian and Early hit the town.
Yeah.
And Carrie's like, I don't want to do that. And Adele's like, I'm not allowed to drink or smoke, so I have to stay back here with the woman folk.
Or eat breakfast.
Yeah, she's not allowed to eat breakfast. That breakfast thing is true, though, which is fucking funny. And at the time, it was probably seen as just another conspiracy theory. But
what breakfast thing's true?
Breakfast was invented by, like... It's more complex than it was invented by Big Cereal, which is basically how he says it. But breakfast was sort of invented through the industrial era because people were working like way longer shifts. They were working so they needed to eat food in the morning. Like they needed to eat a meal because that might be their only time to fucking eat for the next 12 hours. But then when throughout the years, like the farm industry, like agriculture will have like a surplus of a product, or they'll have issues with making money. And there was a time when they had to like push something.
Yeah. And you put a special on or whatever. Yeah.
Since the industrial era
was at a restaurant, you make certain special dishes or whatever.
Yeah, like you got to sell the fish before Monday. So never eat a fish on a Sunday.
Put fish in everything.
Yeah.
Let's make fish pasta. Let's make fish salad. Let's make fish burgers. Everything's fish.
The fish souffle. Let's make fish pie, fish cake.
Yeah.
And that's how fish cakes were invented. No, but essentially, like, so the agriculture industry sees that people need to eat breakfast, so they start pushing breakfast foods that they can make more money off of, right? This sort of stems from conspiracy. I don't know if it's actually true, but I think that kale became very popular because farms had they were growing kale and just had too much kale, and it technically has like superfood properties, so let's push it, and now we're stuck with kale. I was just talking about how early was actually kind of correct about the conspiracy theory about like breakfast. That's in 1993 it was probably full on like you're supposed to laugh at him saying something like that, but by 2022 that's not a conspiracy. That's just how things were in the industrial era into the
also
like,
I think that the point that
post-war.
proves watching it in 2022 is like, if you believe, because he also believes a bunch of other dumb conspiracies that are presented throughout the movie, which are completely ridiculous. All it means to me is that like you can believe every conspiracy and eventually one of them will be correct, or you can just think with your own brain and look at what could be true and couldn't be true, and believing every conspiracy, maybe it'll work out for you every once in a while, but that doesn't mean you should believe all of them.
No, so he has this thing that he keeps bringing up through the movie that if you know how to like, if you have the right mental capacity, you can open these doors to another dimension, and he's claimed that he's seen one before. And towards the end of the movie, when he has Carrie as like a hostage, he's like, we just gotta find a door, and she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, it's gonna be in this nuclear facility. Those probably aren't real.
You know what made this movie 1 million times better?
Sorry, Caylen, what did you say?
It wasn't important. It was just shout out to Nuketown from Call of Duty.
Oh yeah, shout out to fucking Fallout. Also, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I said, you know what would have made this movie 1 million times better?
What?
Is if that they found a door and went through a crazy dimension, and it was like a whole different movie after that. That would have been wicked. It was the two of them having to deal with like interdimensional creatures and shit. I would have been way more into it.
He mentioned that pretty early in the movie too. So you posit that if they would have went through a door at the beginning,
if this movie had interdimensional travel and he was crazy because of that, and that was the reason he was crazy, this movie would be amazing. This would be an amazing movie.
You would also have to put John Carpenter's name on it, because that's the only way that would happen.
John Carpenter presents California with a K.
California.
I can't remember what I was ranting about before I got power. My power flickered on and off quickly. And
I covered it a little bit because I went back to the point that got us there, but it was like her haircut into their sexual perversion for one another, into that's sort of where you went away.
Oh yeah, I was talking about how it definitely, the movie posits that she's weirdly attracted to him in a strange way, and I think that's part of the reason she's meant to be frightened of him, is because she doesn't understand why she's so attracted to him. Because like even when he's like grossly massaging his nasty feet at the dinner table and stuff, like she's grossed out by it, but she has this weird sort of like, she doesn't look like she's grossed out by it. She looks like she's like, I cannot believe this person is doing this right now, and she like can't look away from it, kind of thing, right? Yeah. And that's the same sort of feeling that I got with the car, is that she comes across it and she's like, I can't believe these people are doing this, and she can't stop watching, and then she starts photographing it. And had the movie decided to explore that a little bit more, maybe it would be slightly more interesting. I think that like they try to spend equal time with all four characters when the movie would have benefited from maybe focusing on two of them and having the other two be just as hollow as they are, because they are very hollow characters, all of them. Right. They should have focused on two of them and make something else of this.
I think weirdly enough, like even though Brian is the most milquetoast character of the bunch, he's supposed to be like the main character, and he should have actual growth. And while he does technically have the most growth, because he goes from being like, I could never, to I fully fucking killed this guy and felt nothing because he needed to be erased from the earth person. Nobody else has any character growth at all. Mm-hmm. I guess sort of Adele.
I mean, she doesn't really. She doesn't really have growth. She has trauma that is then confronted with other trauma,
like
and it leads to her dying. She dies immediately after confronting her trauma, and what's her name? The photographer. I keep calling her Ro because that's her name in Star Trek. I can't remember her. Carrie. Okay. She has like a de-evolution of character, and when she's put into a situation, she basically becomes insular. I was happy that she at least tried to escape and by stabbing him, but like it didn't. She gets caught immediately and then is strung to the bed, and you're like, okay. And then his character, they have this whole thing throughout the movie where he's obsessing over empathy for serial killers and trying to figure out why they kill. And then Brad Pitt's character is putting him into these positions where Brad Pitt is trying to get him to kill people. And like, that's supposed to be this grand sort of swell of the film, but it just falls flat for me. Like, it's when he's like got the gun to his head and he's telling him to kill the police officer. I in no way believed at any point in that scene that David Duchovny was going to kill the cop. There wasn't a single iota of my body that was like, oh my God, is he going to do it? The whole time I was like, he's not going to do it. There's no way he's going to do it.
If he had.
But I knew he wasn't, and he didn't. So if he had, I would have been like, holy fuck!
But obviously I didn't know. But David Duchovny is a good actor, and his acting was like, he would have been fundamentally changed for the rest of the movie and the rest of his life by that moment. I think that since it's just a movie and who fucking cares, he should have just killed. He should have just killed him. He should have, to show that he was serious early, should have like shot somebody. Like, he should have shot Carrie like somewhere where it like wouldn't kill her, like shot her in the leg or something, and then put the gun back on him. And then he's like, I mean business. And then David Duchovny kills the cop, and that's irreversible trauma, right? Instead, we get a lame moment where he just throws the gun down, and Early's like, I knew you wouldn't do it. And it's like, what the fuck was the scene for then?
I was really hopeful. I was hopeful that the movie was going to turn there, and then there would have been interesting character development amongst all of them at that point.
Because then that's disturbing to me. That would have been a disturbing scene worth the ages. Like I was saying, when my mom was like, or whoever was traumatized by this movie, it was an adult and I was a kid, because this movie came out when I was 8 years old, right? But it was an adult I was like, what's California? It's got that Brad Pitt guy in it. I wouldn't have known who Brad Pitt is actually yet, but what's this movie? It looks terrifying. And some adult was like, dude, that's terrifying. Oh, you know what I think it was? My uncle had a lot of like really good movies in his collection on VHS. And I wasn't allowed to watch any of them. And I think he had California. And I was like, what's this? And he was like, that's fucked.
If that moment had happened and he had done that, and even if he did what you said, like he shoots Carrie in the leg to prove his point, to get David Duchovny to kill the cop, if that was like the middle of the movie and that happened, and even if they still went to the mansion and the rest of the movie was just spent in the mansion with all of those four characters plus the two elderly people who own the mansion, and it just becomes this round table of revelation for all the characters, that is a much more interesting movie to me. Instead, it goes from that scene to the mansion, which is just like a weird comedic shit show that then ends with the idiot character dying and then him running away with the girl. It all becomes this weird, like it's like they're trying to be funny, but at the same time provocative. Like the nuclear bomb stuff is funny to me, but in this context of this movie, it's not. I'm like, this is like wasted. This is wasted here. The nuclear bomb on the hood of the car going into a nuclear site is amazing in terms of like concept to me. But because it's in this, I'm like, ugh, what are you wasting it here for? Put it in something better.
I think that there's a lot of horror. They were trying to do a lot of things that are horror adjacent, and Natural Born Killers doesn't. I compare this to Natural Born Killers because it's like I said, Natural Born Killers is like this movie, but like way better, to a degree. The
1 degree.
1 degree better. No, a million. It's a night and day situation. I've actually changed my rating of this movie because I've analyzed it way harder talking to you guys. I don't like it. I'm going to tell you what my original rating was when we get to that, but now I've adjusted for inflation, if you will.
I hope it's a full percentage based on what 1993's inflation is to today.
I think that
I give this a negative 100%.
I think that when you have a serial killer taking a woman hostage into a nuclear test site, that evokes horror to me. But then when you have him...
But the idea is so ridiculous that it's also comedic, right?
Yeah, I get that. But comedy and horror a lot of times go very hand in hand because there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff happening, especially in all the 80s horror we just watched.
But this isn't a horror movie. This
I know,
is meant to be a psychological thriller.
I have a point.
Okay, go.
Then it goes psychological thriller in that he makes all the mannequins. So they go into a house. There's all these mannequins. You think it's a family at first, but it's mannequins. We cut back to him, and he's made them all. He's put them all in like 69 in doggy style and sex positions, and that's funny. That's a little bit of like levity, but it's still like that's a very psychological thriller and suspense. But then the rape stuff is very in the genre of thriller and crime drama, and then it destroys all of that like goodwill I was giving it for the like it being horror adjacent, and it just becomes this mess, becomes this jumbled up mess, and it kind of takes away from the fact that the one thing this woman was probably trying to avoid was A, having her boyfriend get murdered by this weirdo, and B,
Boyfriend?
get fucking raped by this weirdo. Seriously.
Oh, that.
And almost like we got to stop saying the R word. So I'm going to, there's only R-starred. I don't know how to say it without.
I mean, I think we've gotten to a point now where like we're talking about it in terms of like what's actually happening.
I think she put it David Duchovny's life, Brian's life, then she would give up getting raped to save his life. And you know what I mean? In that order.
Yeah, she makes that clear through dialogue. She literally says that without saying
just take me and do whatever you want, and just spare him. And that as a concept is very scary in the psychological thriller genre way, but all of the like stuff right before it takes away the
it feels sloppy. Like it's like they didn't realize what they were. I don't know if like the comedic stuff came out in editing or something, or like if they were putting this together and they realized like this isn't working in the way that we thought it would dramatically, so we need to amp this up comedically because that's all we can really get out of it, or if that was their intent in the first place. And if
like,
that was, then it's a serious
here.
misdirect because you cannot make that funny. Like it's not ever going to be funny.
No. It's brutal and it's gross to put that much comedy right before something so heavy. There you go. That's a word I've been searching for this whole shit. And there's some heavy moments in this movie, but nothing is like so heavy that this movie's going to stick with me, which is a direct this is a direct contradiction to my final thoughts. I will say specifically, I'm going to have to like edit as I read my final thoughts. I thought this shit was going to stick with me, but I think this conversation is going to stick with me even more.
More than the movie, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's rough, right? Because like
I still like this movie. I'm still going to sit here and say I still like this movie, okay?
There's lots of stuff in this movie that is commendable, I will say. The cinematography is good. The lighting is good. The performances are good.
Performances are excellent.
As cartoonish as they are, for the most part, everybody is believable in what they're saying. The writing is bad. I don't think the dialogue is particularly great. narration. Let's talk about the narration for a minute. Are you guys familiar with the fact that narration sucks in like 99% of movies? Like,
Well,
it is shitty almost all the time.
Unless it's Morgan
The
Freeman.
narrator is only there because they could not convey something to you visually that would make you think, so they have to explain it to you. And it's like,
so
what the fuck, man?
listen,
like, I don't need this. I understand he's a writer.
I chalk it up to there's a few good narrators. Obviously, Morgan
There's
Freeman.
lots of good narrators. There's many, many, many good
David
narrators.
Duchovny at this time was known for literally narration. Red Shoe Diaries was a very popular show on Showtime. They aired late night and showed boobies.
Of course.
Okay, yeah, we're familiar with Red. We've talked about Red Shoe Diaries in the show before.
And he narrated the shit out of that. And then when the X-Files came along, he did some narration in that as well. So naturally, you got to put the white narrator. I don't even think Morgan Freeman was known for narration yet at this point. I don't think that comes.
Morgan Freeman didn't really pop off until like Shawshank was like the big one, I guess.
I think that was like 94.
And then the War of the Worlds, and he's like, and then they were all killed by the common cold, or whatever.
Yeah. So the biggest narrator. So I do agree with you that like narration isn't necessary.
Okay, but
unless it's
sorry, I had a point I was trying to
Okay.
make before you decided to jump in with your narration corner or whatever the fuck.
Welcome back to Jason's narration corner, and it just
Once
also
upon a
me
time, I
narrating.
had a theory about narration.
And then
Stephen
he
tried
spoke
to
over
express
Steve.
his
A lot of the
opinion,
time-
but Jason jumped in with his own.
Yeah. So a lot of the time, movies, they'll get into a point where they show it to their test audiences and to the producers and studio heads and stuff. And if they don't get it, if they don't immediately understand what is meant to be happening, they'll go through re-edits. And if they still can't do it, their last ditch is to add a narrator's voice into the movie to be like, and then this happened. And like in a movie like Shawshank Redemption, it's completely appropriate because there are long passages of time and you need a person to bridge that gap through some sort of narration process to like show character development. If you're putting a narration into a movie and it doesn't develop a character, it doesn't explain to you that something has happened dramatically through a long period of time, there's no point for it. And like a lot of the moments in this movie when he's narrating, he's just narrating what's happening on the fucking screen. Like, I don't need you to tell me. I can see it. I can see what's happening.
I looked up something to sort of, I wanted to help what you were saying, but it kind of hinders what you're saying. This movie was made for $9 million, which means, for all intents and purposes, it was an indie film.
That doesn't
Most of that went to the actors.
That's not what that means. A budget does not determine if something's indie or not.
My point is that
Well, I mean, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't.
My point is that there was definitely no focus group. They wrote this movie and put a narrator in it. For $9 million?
I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying that that's what they do a lot of the time. And if you've written your script to have a narrator in it, fine. That's
I
completely
do
fine.
think though that this movie was an indie flick. I do think that
Okay, all I'm telling you right now is that if something has a low budget, that doesn't mean indie. It means independently financed, which means that somebody financed it outside of a studio.
But
that's what that means.
When I say indie flick, I mean like this, like shown at like Sundance and TIFF. This movie was probably
all you have to say is low budget.
Low budget.
Like if somebody got money from a studio, then it's not an indie flick. That
Do you
indie
guys
flick
wanna...
means it was independently financed.
Okay, I mean low budget, like a film festival movie, I guess is what I meant. Like this was probably shown at Cannes and Sundance.
Right,
Do you want to?
I'm getting frustrated by your terminology. Like,
I'm sorry. You're putting on
Stop
your
saying things that are wrong.
You're putting on your pedan pants. Right, you're jamming me up right in my padussy. Do you guys want to take a guess at how much money this made at the box office? You want to take a shot in the dark?
How much you made it?
$1.
I'm gonna go with 20.
I'm gonna say 18 million.
And you're gonna say 20 million, Caylen?
Yeah.
Well, if we're playing by
like, are you talking about on the week it was released?
Just box office.
Like overall?
Box office. I think that means total when it's on Google. When it's
its
like the
whole
Wikipedia.
theatrical run.
Yeah. If we were playing by Price is Right rules and you had bet $1, you would be correct because it made $2.4 million.
Oh, what? It cost $9 million?
Oh,
This low budget movie was a colossal failure. I didn't realize it's so funny that movies can take up so much space in your memories rent free, because I thought that this, when Caylen mentioned it, I was like, oh shit, California, that huge movie from the 90s that was a cultural phenomenon. Nobody fucking saw this thing. This is truly a hey, did you see this one movie? We're having a real live hey, did you see this one moment. This made less movie money than fucking Stay Tuned probably made. And probably cost less to make. Wow.
Yeah, they didn't have to make that crazy flipping remote.
Yeah. Or the TV, or the fucking multiple hell worlds.
I mean, they made one hell world. It's called Mannequin Nuclear Test Site.
Nuclear Test Site World, which was the most interesting part of the movie. I've never had my rating changed twice during a fucking...
What, did it go? So it was up, then it went down, then did it go up again? Save it for later.
No, it went worse.
So I was reading up on it a little. There wasn't like too much like facts, whatever I can find out about it, but I did kind of find it interesting that I guess his tooth is already chipped, and so he re-chipped it or whatever.
He re-chips it for movies every once in a while.
Yeah. It made me think, though, of Shia LaBeouf for his role in Fury, where I guess he pulled a whole molar out or something for the role.
Wow, I just assumed you would say Lloyd Christmas for Dumb and Dumber.
I was going to say Dumb and Dumber because that's a real thing that Jim Carrey had, but in that movie, Caylen...
What I said was true as well.
Yeah, I know,
but I just assumed you would have said Dumb and Dumber.
But the thing about what Caylen's saying is so fucked is Shia LaBeouf is so fucked, he just fucking did it. I don't think he got it removed surgically. I think he just did it.
That's too much. That's when you need to maybe get him to see a therapist.
Slight tangent. There's so John Bernthal has a podcast called Real Ones, and he had Shia LaBeouf on it. And if you want to see two guys just act as hard as humanly possible for 2 hours, I made it 10 minutes.
It's like Hot Ones, but they have to take on a new persona every 30 seconds.
Well, the thing about it that's especially dumb is I like John Bernthal, but he's so like, I'm the Punisher in real life. Like that's what he seems like to me. And then
is that the hamburger face guy who played the Punisher?
Hamburger faced.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I call him hamburger face because in the Punisher, he's like the whole time he looks like he got hit by a bunch of fists for real. Like the whole show.
Because he's just beat up the whole time.
Yeah.
Yes, he's the hamburger faced guy from the Punisher. No, but I feel like he's also Shane from fucking Walking Dead. So that's what I assume he's like in real life. But then
he's in Fury too, I think, right?
Yeah. That's why he had him on. He's like, I haven't seen you in a while, and Shaba was like, yeah, I beat up my girlfriend. Now I'm just gonna tell my side of the story.
You want to beat each other up for a minute? Yeah.
And that's when I was like, nope. I'm reading the comments. Every comment on the YouTube video is like, I'm so glad that somebody gave Shia. Men these days who do these improprieties need to have a voice where they can, a platform where they can have their voice. And I sound exactly like Alex Jones, and I'm doing that on purpose because
turn the friggin' frogs gay.
Turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand me? If you want to listen to two guys act as hard as humanly possible, even though John Bernthal's probably way harder than Shia LaBeouf, but Shia LaBeouf is 2 steps above a literal dandelion as far as hard goes. And you know what, Shia LaBeouf? Sorry, but that's how I feel.
What are you talking about? What is the point of this? What are you trying to tell us?
Just we mentioned Shia LaBeouf, and I wanted to.
Okay.
I
feel like this is a podcast I would never want to listen to or recommend to anybody. So then stop talking about it.
It's a sarcastic reverse. I should put / Okay, all of what I just said /s.
Okay. so he didn't mean any of it.
No.
Okay, so I mean, we kind of went through the whole movie. David Duchovny eventually drives a truck to the mannequin house.
She literally, the old lady literally says, "Here, take this truck."
I know. I said hijack, but I meant he hijacked it emotionally. Like he also took all night to drive there, I guess. Like he didn't get there in the night. He got there early in the morning somehow.
No, he got there and then fucking flipped the truck and then just like crawled out.
Oh
in the
yeah, I
morning.
forgot that he fucked up. He sucks at. I mean,
So
he had handcuffs
stupid.
on, but still, like fucking chill,
No.
bro.
He's driving. It's a little bit like it's the desert because they're in Nevada, so there's like dust, like a dust.
Yeah, it's
storm.
not like driving in snow like we're used to.
And I think
It's
the
dust.
point. I think the point was that Early had the forethought to like park his car across the dirt road, so like he'd see it and have to swerve. But like, what? And why did he swerve so fucking hard that he goes off like a jump, and it does the movie like the truck just flips like that, and then he's fine. He's knocked out for the rest of the
I
night.
can answer this question.
He had a seatbelt on.
They wanted to make something interesting happen on the screen because we all started getting bored.
And also a reason for Carrie to just fully get raped by Early.
Yeah, well, he does his like it's
very,
oh my god.
It's very Deliverance, which is
It
a
was
movie I
too
could never
much.
watch
It wasn't
again.
needed. He should have had a moment where he like had to like mentally cool down. Like him getting stabbed should have been like his realization that him being a horrible sexual assaulter, like that's like what I do, and like he should have like seen the wound and saw her and decided not to do it. That would have been more interesting. That would have made me think more about his character, which would have made the next like 5 minutes of the movie where he gets killed by David Duchovny far more interesting. They didn't do that. What they did was they're like, let's make him an ultimate monster that can never be forgiven. And you're like, fuck this.
Well, what's
stupid
kind
movie.
of dumb is he takes her to that place.
Mannequin world.
The mannequin zone. He feels her up a bit. Then he
The man
heavily
zone.
implies that he's going to get what he came for. Then she, like, they do the thing where his face just goes, and you hear, so she stabs him with a piece of glass. It's stuck in him. He looks down. He goes, pulls it out, and slams it down, and she runs into the next room. It doesn't
You didn't know. You can't blame her. Stop victim blaming.
I'm not victim
Why
blaming.
did they put mannequins at nuclear test bomb sites?
So when you nuke
to
it, you
make
can
it
see
more
where the
authentic.
parts go. You can see how far the parts fly if they don't get vaporized.
Also,
by
we
a
don't know that
nuclear
that's
weapon.
a thing. That's just a thing we see in movies and shit. I don't know if that's actually true.
Nuclear test sites exist, and they have
I know that
houses.
What
them.
I'm saying is that we don't know that they put mannequins in there to like eating dinner and shit, like in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, and he goes and he's like, I need to use your phone, and they're all just like mannequins eating dinner. Like we don't know that they do that. They probably put stuff in there to like chairs and stuff to see what the damage is, but like, why put a mannequin? It's not going to show the damage it does to a real human
They
being.
should use those flesh
that's
mannequins
what I
from
mean, right?
MythBusters.
I'm pretty sure those weren't invented when they were.
I think that
making
Jamie Hyneman
nuclear
invented
bombs.
those.
Yeah.
And then they started
I
using them
believe
on that Warrior,
Those shows are
American
they
Warrior versus
make-
Warrior show or whatever.
Yeah, they make a ninja fight a rubber dummy with real bones inside it or whatever.
Yeah.
Ugh.
The
Sparta.
deadliest warrior, was that what that show is called? Where they just like try out
This
different
week on The
weapons?
Deadliest Warrior.
Like we're gonna
Can the Spartan warrior defeat a Shaolin monk? You decide.
You decide.
Actually, we decide.
and then they spend a full half hour of Spike TV just like stabbing a pig with a sai.
Yeah. Or like a big giant bearded man with muscles like axing it like they go in slow motion and they put blood bags inside it so when they slice it the mannequin bleeds and we're all like holy fuck, like high out of our heads like what, this is the coolest thing I ever saw.
2004 was a different time, man. Spike TV, wow. I wonder if Spike TV still exists. Probably not.
Yeah, cable's done.
No, it got
much.
canceled. The whole Me Too movement went after Spike. The whole
really?
channel got canceled. Yeah,
I'm surprised.
it's called Me Too TV now. This is a bad joke. I'm
No,
sorry.
it's a bad
That's
joke,
dumb.
but I could have riffed on it. The thing that's funny about that is that Jimmy Kimmel had the Man Show, which like every sketch was like a cancelable offense.
Yeah.
Adam Carolla is pretty much. I think he just faded into obscurity. He
got canceled for real because he couldn't get beyond the antics of that show. Whereas Jimmy Kimmel like became a real person. It's like, no, I was playing a character. Whereas
Adam Carolla did have a cool.
I wasn't playing a character. I am this asshole.
That's a pretty good Adam Carolla, but Adam Carolla had a show that was pretty interesting that nobody saw because it was on like the fucking History Channel or one of those shitty. But basically, he went and looked at your house for like renovations that were done, and then the reason he was there is because the renovator did a bad job, and then he confronts the renovation people, and then he like fixes the home. So that's a pretty interesting. It's like Bar Rescue, but for renovators.
It's like this movie, an interesting concept, but probably really boring to watch.
Well, I like those. I like
just
those
kidding,
like
I'm
that.
just
But
kidding,
that's a good way to bring it back. I have mostly. I thought his name was Barry, not Brian, for most of the movie.
Hey, brah.
Hey, brah.
They did say bra a lot in this movie, and I was like, wow, it has been a long time since that was a thing that has been in the Geist. They were, even Freddie too, they were saying bro all the time. I was like, wow, bro really goes through like ebbs and flows of coming back and leaving us, you know? When I was in high school, bro was not a thing that we would say. And if you said it, it was like a dad saying it kind of thing, right?
Hey there, bro.
And then bro came back real hard, and now it's bro.
I wanted to say also that early in the movie, I thought that Brad Pitt's character early was supposed to be Satan. And I was hoping that they'd get a little darker, you know?
Interdimensional Traveler. This could have been a sequel to Prince of Darkness. Remember that shit? Oh, I wanted to say one thing early on, and I forgot about it. Why the fuck, when he's digging that hole, he is so dirty?
We didn't talk about all of everything so around dirty. This whole hole. First of all, why is he so dirty? Second of all, why is he...
Because of the dirt. That's easy.
Why is he 100% buck naked when they show him climb out of the hole a few moments later? You get an ass shot.
Clearly, he's like rolling around in there. But also, what I was wondering is, had he already killed the landlord at that point? Because clearly he was digging the hole to like kill the landlord. But we didn't learn that till a little bit later. So I thought that he was digging a hole for like a septic tank or something. In my head, I was like, oh, maybe he apologized to the landlord and said, hey, I'll dig the septic tank hole.
We don't know much about what this movie is at this point, so you have to forgive us. That there was wild speculation for me as well. But then, when the movie really kicks it into gear, gets into the Home Alone of it, if you will, when they start their car ride, we immediately flash back to the trailer that they lived in burned out. So he burns the trailer, kills the landlord at some point, puts the landlord in the hole, and buries him from like the waist up like 3 inches. You see his legs.
It's almost like he buries only his like face or something, right? Like it's like he doesn't want to look at his face. He also cuts his finger off and takes his ring, which like never comes back at all. The ring does not come back. What is the point of that? Why did they have that?
Why did he dig
what does it mean?
A 6-foot fucking full-on grave and not
it's also like 6 feet wide too. It's like 6 feet wide and deep. Like he built like a horse grave.
This dude is a Batman villain.
I built this thing for a horse, but you'll do.
You'll do, bats.
Kills them. Yeah. Anyway, I think I don't know if I have much more to say about this. Like it's all over the goddamn place, this movie, and I don't really understand most of it, but it looks good.
I think that brings us to our final thoughts.
I think so too. Honestly, I don't have much more to say either. Yeah, Caylen, why don't you do your duties?
So let's go in reverse order. Jason, why don't we start with your final thoughts?
I'm going to read you verbatim. Haven't talked to you guys, haven't fleshed this out, haven't thought about it. I finished the movie, and here's what I wrote. California is a really good film that holds up. It is intense and well written and has lots of tense and suspenseful moments. That's true. That's true. I actually did. I had some suspense and some tense, some good.
Suspense.
I don't know. Well written. I was never bored watching it. That's true. Always wanted to know what's going to happen next. Also true. The pure confusion, I think, in retrospect, was what kept me going. It's a rare film that has unsavory language that makes sense in context, nudity that makes sense in context, and sex that makes sense in context. Now, this was something that we talked about a little bit, but I did really want to hit home that I thought that to nail the realism of what they were clearly going for, they wanted this to feel real, even though the characters were sort of caricature in one. The cinematography and like the themes and the world had a realism to it that you don't see a lot in movies. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of superfluous sex, there's a lot of superfluous nudity, and there's a lot of superfluous use of the F slur and the R word.
The F word for gay person, just in case you guys are wondering.
Yeah.
But it's a time. It was clicking in my head because I'm like, ooh, meh. But I don't think also whatever. It made sense within the context of everything.
Yes, and it's not like we're watching a fucking shitty action movie from 1987, and the character who's like the comic relief just keeps calling everybody the F slur because it's hilarious. You know what I mean? Like,
no, it was like shitty characters calling people that to be shitty.
Exactly, because we kind of glossed. There's a scene where they're in a bar and there's these rednecks. And they, David Duchovny looks like he's from the city, which of course is going to make a biker call him the F slur, and it made sense. And he gets his comeuppance for being called that. You know what I mean? So, anyway, and then I wrote a little note to myself that said, if we talked about that, I will reiterate points about the needlessness of sex in movies, unless it is to feel real / gritty. And I do have a lot of problems with just sex in movies and TV for no reason. That's why I'm not watching House of the Dragon. I watched the first episode and I thought that sex scene was too gratuitous, and it sort of I from what I gather, that trend happens with all of the everything in that series. Anyway, that's another conversation because I don't know. Overall, I enjoyed the film and it'll stay with me for a time. Movies that were trying to do this kind of stuff in the early 90s, such as True Romance, Natural Born Killers, Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction to a degree, aka the brutal 90s crime drama, will always have a place in my heart. So I gave this movie a 4 out of 5, and with that I almost resold it back to myself, but I have to adjust for inflation. I'm gonna give it a 3 with the asterisk that I started at a 4. Halfway through this show I went down to a 3.7. And throughout the rest of it, I just fully was like, this is a fucking 3. I like this movie, but I cannot, in my right mind, as a movie reviewer, go any higher than a 3 for the amount of problems with, like, the storytelling this movie has. And I would probably watch this movie again and be entertained by it. But overall, like, I recommend this movie, even with fucking Brad Pitt's improprieties, because he's awesome. And he gets got in the end. Like, he fucking gets destroyed. So if you want to see Brad Pitt just get a shovel to the face, 2 thumbs up. I give this movie a shovel to Brad Pitt's face.
Oh, nice. You're joining us with our abstract ratings. I like it.
There you go. There you go.
Beautiful. Steven.
All right. Here we go. The movie California was difficult to watch for several reasons, though I believe it has a couple of technical merits that are worth mentioning. In the year it was shot, cinematography was in a state of rapid evolution, and several different styles were coming into a point of watershed when it comes to setting bars for future films. This movie is a good example of a specific visual style that was not common at the time, but most people are familiar with today. Harsh and hot. The lighting, paired with complicated camera placement at the very least, made most of the shots within the movie pleasant to look at. That said, the semi-interesting cinematography was not enough to keep my interest through the film. All characters were unlikable for many reasons, even specific reasons unique to them individually. The photographer was judgy out of the gate, and the choice to make her an erotic photographer added very little, maybe even lessened her character, as it seemed a flimsy attempt at character building, but came off as tasteless and an excuse to have overt sexuality on screen, something that was accomplished already several other times throughout the film. Brian was dumb, and his narration was pointless. Narration can be good when it has a point or develops a character, or voices something that it's practically impossible to show on screen. There was one moment of many moments I found to be appropriate. The rest made me feel like a popcorn munching idiot being told that I don't understand the visuals that are telling me the same thing. Juliette Lewis was playing someone with a mental deficit, but was meant to be an exemplification of abuse and give us the feeling of helplessness. The character was flat, and I would even say offensive, showing that the reason she was abused was because she was too stupid to understand what abuse is. A competent version of this would have us understand and empathize with her character development. But all I felt was that I wanted her to stop droning on and to put down her fucking yo-yo. Pitt was a cartoon character who had zero character development and was beyond predictable. There was not a single moment where his actions seemed to come out of nowhere or provoke emotion in me. I knew he was going to do a shitty thing at every corner, and he did. The score sucked and was even goofy at times. The premise of the movie is quite interesting, but the execution was not. I would have loved to have seen this same story told with a more interesting character and maybe even some subtext that didn't rely on a Red Shoe Diaries narration for a flowery.
Did you write Red Shoes down?
Sorry?
Did you actually have Red Shoes written down in your thing?
I did, yeah. I wrote down, and maybe even some subtext that didn't rely on a Red Shoe Diaries narration for the flowery bits. Overall, I did not enjoy this movie, and I found myself constantly checking the runtime throughout to see when it would be over. I'm sure this movie has its fan base, but I unfortunately am not a part of it. I give this movie 437 years of bad luck paid in full over several lifetimes.
Nice. Well, that's a hard one to follow up to. So I will say that watching it this go around was harder. It was a hard, I went in with with knowledge of current affairs and everything. To talk about this movie from when I first saw it, it seemed different. It didn't seem like your typical cookie cutter movie where they kind of follow the same sort of thing. Roles were being played that weren't typical to the people. I did feel that the performances were good. After talking with you guys, and just watching it again for myself, I have kind of lost a bit of interest in this movie, unfortunately. From a technical point of view, I did like the framing of a lot of things, a lot of scenes, to try and give some praise where praise is due. I actually enjoyed her artwork. The priest one being my most favorite. The other ones were basic, but still, for what they were, again, more so just like the framing and the black and white. And you are only seeing like hips and stuff with a little bit of this and that, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. I'm curious, like one thing that tickles my fancy is, what makes people tick, and which is what led to me picking the movies that I picked for this month. Before I finalize here, my question to you guys is, what do you think makes people tick?
Oh my God. We're not psychologists.
No,
well, just answer as yourself. No,
well, I think once again, I think it's based off of your. So there's the short answer from my point of view is that it's essentially how the world you've been treated by the world, how the if you've been left behind or if you've excelled in life, and then on top of that, your fucking brain chemistry, right? So I think that Early's character was a victim of all of the worst problems, but then on top of that, he has some undiagnosed fucking like psychopath, sociopath shit